Good morning, Primary 6. Good to see everyone. It is the 20th of May. And today, the main thing we're going to be talking about is Wolf Brother. But first, let's have a little bit of a look through the chat. Who have we got tuning in today? We've got Alyssa, you were first up today. Corinna, Hamish. We've got Michael. We've got Audrey there. Sam. Aisha, good to see all of you guys. Great to see you tuning in again. Just a couple of little admin things first of all. So there's going to have to be a little bit of a change to the way we're doing our team meets. So Edinburgh Council has decided to make things in some ways more challenging for us. Obviously, the ability to see each other's faces is very helpful when it comes to reading body language and that sort of thing, seeing whether or not you actually understand things. But unfortunately, it has now been decided that we're not allowed to use camera function at all in any of the team meetup sessions. So I would ask that in any future team meets, you keep your camera turned off, and unfortunately the teacher that you're speaking to, whether that's me, Miss Lindsay, someone else, whichever teacher is speaking to you, they'll also have to have their camera off. So it might cut down on a little bit of that back and forth, but hopefully we'll make it work. Okay? But that is one of the things that we're going to have to deal with just now. Now, I'm noticing people saying, "When is he on the chat?" Am I live now? Just to check. Oh no, yep, we've got people responding to me, so that's fine. Yeah, I can see that people are responding. I don't know why they decided that. I know it's to do with keeping you guys safe online. I get it from that point of view. I do get it from that point of view, because it is important that that your identities are protected, and you don't want to be putting yourself out there. But at the same time, I can sort of see the other side, that when you're talking with a teacher and you're involved in a learning conversation, I think the little nuances, the little flicker of understanding in the eye, or the little narrowing of the brow when you're struggling to understand something, all that stuff really matters. And we as teachers get really used to noticing those things, and then based on that we either explain it a different way or go over it again. So body language actually really matters when you're teaching, and taking that away, I think, is something that makes it a little bit trickier. It's why doing it on here isn't as good. All you guys are doing is typing messages to me, and I'm missing out on a lot of the body language stuff. So it's it's not as ideal as obviously being in a classroom. Right, quick challenge before we move on to talk a little bit about Wolf Brother. Sorry, I'm glitching out all over the place here. The green screen isn't quite right. I'm going to try and tinker with it in the background. But where do you think we are today? Obviously we've been to Mars already. We've been another couple of places on planet Earth. Where do you think these surroundings are today? Post your guesses in the comments while I try and sort out the green screen filter, because it is making me glitch out all over the place, for which I am sorry. And sorry if I'm now not visible for a little bit. Let's see if we can take this. Oh, no, now the background's going. Hopefully that will make me glitch a bit less. We will see. Take it just to the limit there. Okay. So let's have a look at our guesses. What guesses have we made? Anything so far? Someone saying Iceland. That's a good guess. I can see why you'd be saying that with the sort of volcanic activity there. You can tell that it's clearly a very volcanic place, but I can tell you it's not Iceland. But I like that as a guess. It's not Mars. Mars usually has a pink sky to us, although Callie, I think that's a good guess as well. But this is not Mars. Mars isn't particularly volcanically active. Looking through Mesa, I don't even know where Mesa is. We've got someone who has said the Sahara. The Sahara is more sandy than this, but you're not a million miles away. Venus, you nearly are a million miles. In fact, you're probably more than a million miles away saying Venus. But I can say why I can see why you would say that as well, because very volcanic, and you can see this looks very volcanic. But one of the things with Venus, I don't think we actually have any pictures at all from the surface of Venus, for one thing, because any spacecraft we would send there would like melt pretty much straight away. I think we've sent things. We've sent some things around Venus, but I don't think into Venus. No, where we are is something called the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia, which is a section of very volcanically active land. And you have all these fantastic stone formations that are mainly made of compounds, chemicals that are containing things like sulfur. So there's an awful lot of sulfur going about in the water from volcanic activity, and so it's actually, I think parts of it are really quite toxic, really quite dangerous to be around. But the fact that you've got stones, minerals of these fantastic colours all over the place, I think is quite wonderful. Here's a different view of it, hopefully, if I can... there we go. So this is it. You know what, actually, I'm going to get myself out the way a second. There we go. So here's a slightly different view of it. I just think that looks absolutely fascinating. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the fact that I'm colorblind. I see the colors maybe differently to you in some sort of way. But I'd imagine for you guys it looks even cooler. Yeah, I just think that looks mind-boggling, this place. Anyway, so the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia. Quite a cool-looking place, in my opinion. Anyway, right. Wolf Brother then. So, ideally, in an ideal world, fingers crossed, all of you have started reading Wolf Brother like good boys and girls. If you haven't, then don't worry, but you are a little bit behind. So if that's the case, try and play a little bit of catch up. The idea is that you're going to be reading 5 chapters a week, and you have to have had roughly 5 chapters a week. Sometimes it'll be a bit more, sometimes it'll be a bit less. But the idea is that you will have read that by Thursday of each week. So basically you have till tomorrow to get through the requisite number of chapters, which is to the end of chapter 5 this week. Okay? So that's what you have to try and get through. There's going to be various tasks that we're going to post up about it. One thing that I'm going to encourage you to do, and here's my wee tip, because Wolf Brother, yeah, okay, we are going to do things like comprehension on it, but if we were in school, what I'd be getting you to do would be more sort of, I don't know, more fun outdoors activities. We'd be doing things like learning how they made rope in the Stone Age, learning a little bit about fire, about what plants you can eat and what plants you can use as different medicines. So those are the sorts of things that we would be doing if we were in school. Because we're not at school, I'm going to try and give you the same activities or similar activities, but obviously I'm not going to be there to guide you in the same sort of way. So, as you're reading, there's a few things that I want you to really tune into, and one are the names of different plants. So, the author, Michelle Paver, I just love the way she has written this particular book. In fact, this particular series of books. I've read a few of them now. So Wolf Brother is the first in a series of books all about this main character, Torak. But it's based in the Stone Age, and she has conducted amazing research into the way things were done in the Stone Age. So the plants that she lists and the uses that she provides for them are all genuinely the way that they would have been used and can still be used. So, for instance, for the people that haven't started reading, I hope I'm not spoiling it too much, but at the start of the book, you discover that Torak, who is a young boy of about 12 summers old, so 12 years old, he there's been a bit of an incident, and his father is injured at the start of the book, and he makes reference to a couple of the plants that he could use in order to help his try and help his father. So I'm going to try and switch views here. Actually, let's switch to the Active Inspire view. There we go. Oh no, there's two of me. We can't be having that. Let's delete that second one. There we go. Okay, so this is Michelle Paver here. So that's the author, and obviously the front cover of the book here. But at the start of the book, one of the things that we hear about straight away is yarrow. Now, because of the green screen, you won't be able to see this, but here's some I actually picked earlier. I'm guessing it's not going to come up on the green screen, but certainly you can see it behind me. I'll try and show you the. That's because it's green, isn't it? So it's going to glitch out. But you can see its shape if I hold it in front of my face, which is kind of cool. You can get an idea of the shape of it there, if not the color. But so you can see, I genuinely went out this morning and I picked some yarrow. It is growing in D-Mains Park, and Torak makes use of this, or would have made use of this, as a way of stopping bleeding. And this was a common thing that was used right from the Stone Age, right through to sort of the medieval times. So it's well known as being something that can be used to stop bleeding. So if you crush it up like so, and then apply it to a wound, then it supposedly helps with bleeding. It's not something I've ever tried, but this is something that has been commonly used. In fact, I believe Homer, who wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad, I'm sure that one of the heroes in the Iliad, Achilles, uses yarrow at one point for a wound, I think, if memory serves me right. It might not have been Achilles, it might have been another character. But it's been well documented throughout history, and I think it's fantastic that Michelle Paver has put this in. Another thing that she mentions Torak wanted to use is beard moss, which, okay, we don't see it growing so much now because of the amount of pollution, but if you go certainly to the Highlands, where... Well, actually, am I not visible right now? No, that's fine. It's just buffering on my screen. If you go to the Highlands, what you should find is that this stuff is growing much more freely. Can I just check? Can you write in the comments, are you seeing the fact that I've got plants behind me and that sort of thing at the moment? Because it's not displaying on my YouTube thing. But that could just be that I'm lagging a lot on my own connection. Oh, there we go. No, it's catching up with me now. Excellent. Anyway, so do pay close attention to the plants that Michelle Paver references. I would even write them down as you see them and write down the pages that you see them on as well. Okay? Right, guys. The other thing that we're going to talk about is what do you think life was like in Torak's time? So this is the Stone Age, or the Neolithic. What things would have been different for life then? So obviously there would have been no school, there would have been no shirts and ties, but there would have been no metal even. This was before the discovery of metal. So life would have been monumentally different. So you'll hear Torak talking about using using a knife at various points. There's various points in the story where a knife is used because that's a standard tool that you would have carried as a Stone Age person. You'd have had a knife, but that knife wouldn't be made of metal. It would be made of a couple of different things like either flint or obsidian. Flint was particularly common because flint was really easy to work. However, if we were living in the Stone Age here, around Edinburgh, we'd be finding it really, really tricky to find flint. Flint just isn't around. Okay, so how would we get things? And you can write a comment back here. How would we, if we were living in the Stone Age, how would we make a knife if we don't have any flint or any any obsidian to make it out of. What would we do about that? Type your thoughts in the comments. How would we make things like a knife or an arrowhead? What would we have to do? What are your thoughts? I'll give you a wee moment to think about that. But that's one of the thoughts for you to contemplate there. Another thing to think of. Oh, so okay, we've got some things coming up. So some people saying wood, and you could maybe use wood. Certainly, if you use wood and then heat it over a fire, that fire hardens it a little bit. So if you just blacken it, not char it, but blacken it, that hardens it a wee bit. But more often than not, no, you wouldn't try making a knife out of wood. Stones, I'll tell you what, you grab a stone and see if you can sharpen it into a knife, just a random stone around Edinburgh. Be much harder than you think. So we've got things like granite, sorry, not granite, basalt, and these volcanic rocks around Edinburgh, around where we are. So we're less likely to use things like that. However, Mr. Ramsey here has hit the nail on the head straight away there by saying bone. Yeah, bone would be a really common material to make knives out of. So if you take a bit of animal bone or deer antler, any of these things, they can be sharpened much easier than, say, a bit of sandstone or a bit of basalt. They'll be sharpened much easier, and you can make all sorts of things out of bone. Yeah, so you can make knives, you can make needles, all sorts of things were made out of bone in the Stone Age, which I think is fantastically interesting. But the other thing that's really cool is you would have also had trade. So things like flint, they were traded over huge distances between Stone Age tribes. So we don't have much flint growing around Edinburgh, but we might have a trading relationship with somewhere to the south where they do have flint. So trade was really common in the Stone Age. We think of it as just being a couple, a Stone Age tribe there, a Stone Age tribe there, and they didn't communicate. They maybe even spoke different languages, and that was it. And yeah, they maybe did speak different languages, but they did often partake in a lot of trade of things like flint, things like obsidian, certain types of wood for certain reasons. Seeds may have even been traded. So there was all sorts of trade that went on. Now, people saying bone, yuck. I find that a bit curious because I do know that most of you guys are meat eaters, and I can't see a reason why bone would be any yuckier than some chicken nuggets or a steak. It's just another part of an animal. To answer Liam's question, I would like to think that I'd be Wolf Clan as well. But although ravens are kind of cool, there is a raven clan, and ravens are really cool creatures actually. So maybe Raven Clan. I've got a lot of respect for ravens and corvids generally. They're really cool creatures. So ravens, crows, rooks. They're actually really intelligent creatures, so I quite like the idea of being Raven Clan. But yeah, anyway, bones, things like ribs or a thigh bone would be really good for making certain things. And bear in mind, there were lots of different animals back in the Stone Age as well that maybe aren't around now. So there were bears going around in Scotland. So a bear, if you were wandering about here, there would have been bears around. For us to contend with. There would have been wolves around in Scotland for us to contend with. And there were not things like cows and sheep. They hadn't been domesticated yet, so there wasn't farming. Farming hadn't been invented in the Stone Age. So farming is only about 10,000 years old. That sounds like a lot. But where Torax based, it hadn't been discovered yet. So farming wasn't yet a thing. So you wouldn't have had domestic cows, domestic livestock, horses, or tamed horses. There were wild horses going about in the forest, but not tamed ones. So it was a very, very different world to live in, which I think is fantastic to contemplate. even making something like your clothes, you would have to use a skinned animal skins. So if you were to kill something big, you could skin it, take all the fat off the underside of the skin, tan the hide, which is to do with sort of drying it and using. You can do kind of horrible things, such as use the brain of the animal and rub that into its skin, and then that makes it go a little bit stiffer and more leather-like. But all that stuff was done so that people could wear clothing, which is again kind of fascinating, and we've lost a lot of this stuff. We don't know how to do some of the stuff that they did back in the Stone Age. We can only speculate at some of the things that they used to be able to do. So I find it a fantastically interesting part of history. And it's one that obviously even writing hadn't been invented yet, so we have no records of it. We can only figure it out through things like archaeology. Another thing to watch out for in Wolf Brother, and these are, in fact, there's a couple of things that might come up in comprehension questions for you to think about. So the start of the book is very, very tense. It's a very tense start of the book. And I'm giving you the answer to a question that might come up now. But one of the ways that the author, Michelle Paver, creates tension is by using very short, sharp sentences. Okay, so the sentences are, it might be a whole paragraph that is just made up of a single sentence. And then there's a new line, and then a new line. So that is one way that it creates tension. There's a lot of Torak questioning himself as well, and the conversation between him and his father is all quite short. There's short and sharp. There's not a lot of detailed explanation. So that is one of the ways that an author creates tension. I've heard a lot of teachers in the past say that one of the ways you build tension is by using short sentences. I disagree. You build tension slowly by using longer, drawn-out sentences. That builds tension. But when it is tension, when it's actually tense, that's when it's short and sharp and punchy. So building tension can be done out with longer, drawn-out sentences, but the tension itself, the bit that is scary, is like Michelle Paver's done at the start of Wolf Brother. It's the quick sentences. Okay. Question from Zach here: how could they talk when modern English wasn't invented? Well, English was by no means the first language. In fact, English is quite a modern thing. So language itself is really, really old. There were all sorts of languages long before English. So there were various forms of Celtic languages and Germanic languages. But before that, there were languages from Mesopotamia. And before that, there will have been African languages, because we all started. If you go back far enough, all of us started off in Africa. So all of us originally were speaking some sort of African language from tens of thousands of years ago. In terms of stuff that's been written down, most of the earliest writing comes from sort of Iran, Iraq. I think it's more Iran actually. Iran, Saudi Arabia. Basically, the Middle East is where the first writing really crops up. A little bit around Egypt, but mainly around the rest of the Middle East. So that's where writing really started. And that was about 10, 11,000 years ago, roughly. Okay. But yeah, English, very new language. Very, very new language compared to these older. All languages are pretty much brand new compared to the ancient languages. So yeah, there we go. Anyway, guys, I'm kind of spraffing on here. There's not much else to talk about. One last thing is parts of the book are written not from the point of view of Torak. They're written from the point of view of the wolf. So again, spoiling a bit of the story for people that haven't started reading it yet. But the Torak comes across a wolf. I'll not say under what circumstances, but part of the story is written from the point of view of the wolf, and it kind of uses things as in wolf talk as well. So you kind of have to do a bit of interpretation there, such as it describes this sort of thing running through the forest as being the fast wet, because of course a wolf doesn't necessarily have a word for river. What is a river? Well, it's something that's wet and it moves fast, so it's the fast wet. Can't remember the term that the wolf uses for fire. It's is it the hot? It's something that bites hot, I'm sure, but that's describing describing fire there. So the wolf, chapters of the wolf are written in a very different way to the chapters that are seen from Torak's point of view. Anyway, guys, that's a couple of things just to prompt you about what to look out for. Now, you've got some activities to do today. You've got, obviously, a bit of reading to catch up on, potentially. You've got a little bit of work on bar graphs to do. So you're drawing your own bar graph today. Try and post all that to the class notebook whenever you get a chance. You've got a little bit of grammar work. I would say if you're behind on the reading, I'd prioritize reading over the grammar. You know, if it's a choice between different things, get some reading done. Okay, the reading is probably more important than the grammar is. If you've got time for all of it, great. But if you're struggling for time, as I know some of you will be, that's fine. Also, what I would strongly recommend is downloading the folder from Teams. So you'll know that there's a folder of the different books. You can download that to your desktop, and the audiobook, you could actually play it on something like an audiobook player. You can download all sorts of audiobook apps, and then you could actually play the audiobook once you've downloaded it from Teams. But you would have to download the folder first. Okay, but that's all there for you. The good thing about playing it on an audiobook is it can speed it up as well. So if the narrator is speaking too slowly, you can make him speed up a wee bit. Anyway, guys, to answer a frequently coming up question, I've got 2 calls today. The first, well, should we do 2 or just 1? Let's try 2. We'll try 2 calls. So we'll have one at 10:40 with the Parvana's Journey group, and another at 11 with the Windscape group. If you want to tune in, if you missed your call, then tune into one of the other ones. Tomorrow, I'll see the other 3 groups. Okay, so sorry I wasn't able to do it yesterday. Some things came up, but tomorrow I'll see the other 3 groups in their usual order. So starting at 10:40 and going 11 and 11:20. We'll do that tomorrow. Okay. Anyway, guys, I'm signing off just now, and I'll see Parvana's Journey group in 10 minutes or so. Cheers, guys. Oh, sorry, just quickly, do you have to come to the call? No, you absolutely don't. No. Just to clarify that, you do not have to attend any of the calls. If you don't feel like you get really much out of it, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. You don't need to come along. If you're coming along, I'd recommend you have a question to ask. So come along, particularly if you have a question. Okay? Anyway, signing off. See you later.